Chapter 1004. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. Galaxy K93. In the vast and boundless universe, a silver-white spaceship was nimbly shuttling through a dark red asteroid belt. The celestial bodies that looked small through the telescope were actually huge, and they had their own trajectories. Plus, the spaceship itself was moving faster than light. It looked like a very dangerous dodging game. But this wasn't a problem for it. After all, it wasn't an ordinary spaceship, but the strongest battleship of the Imperial Marshal. It had accompanied the Imperial Marshal through the long and glorious years of war, setting the pinnacle of the entire galaxy, and even the entire Federation. There were many rumors about it. Some said that it was a battleship that the Imperial Marshal spent a lot of money to get someone to custom make it. Some said that it was a secret weapon that the Imperial Marshal's grandfather left him. But there were also rumors that it was originally a nanny robot, the kind that made milk for the little Marshal and changed his diapers. The cute AI's voice sounded, and it seemed to be a little excited. Obstacles can't be avoided. The elimination plan will be implemented. Do you want to stop it? The man sitting on the back of the chair with his eyes closed didn't even lift his eyelids. The AI's voice became even more excited. The elimination plan is officially activated. Warm reminder. Halfway through the sentence, the man casually raised a hand that was still slender and beautiful even though he was wearing white gloves. With a click, he fastened the safety buckle on the back of the chair. The AI made a satisfied mechanical sound like an old father. Baby is so obedient. The man's thin lips opened slightly. Call me baby again and I'll smash you. It was unknown if it was threatened, but the AI really didn't say anything. However, it didn't give up and flashed a line of words on the screen, as if to show its last bit of unyielding will. Can't be smashed. The man still had his eyes closed, but he seemed to have guessed its little action. He said calmly, cancel the autopilot. The AI admitted defeat in a second. Marshal is so awesome. Next, it began to focus on eliminating the unavoidable asteroids. Under normal circumstances, the Federation's battleships wouldn't randomly destroy celestial bodies in the universe. However, this mission was urgent and they couldn't care less about the Federation's laws. At the same time, on an orange planet, a total of 30 battleships were ready to set off. This was a newly risen group of space pirates in the star system. Most of them were fugitives who had escaped from prison. They had already successfully robbed 10 space supply stations of the Federation and 2 supply planets of the Empire. The Federation attached great importance to this matter and had once sent a legion to encircle and annihilate them. However, there were traitors among them who were very familiar with the Federation's battleships and fighting style. They did not fight head-on and fled after firing a shot. They were extremely cunning. The Federation had a huge headache over this. Recently, they had set their eyes on another supply planet controlled by the Will family, and were planning to take action tonight. However, before they could set off, a dark spaceship suddenly appeared in the dark night sky above their heads. It slowed down after entering the planet's atmosphere, and hovered steadily above the 30 battleships. The first to discover it was a gun-wielding sentinel. At first, he thought that it was their accomplice, but later he found out that it wasn't because the bottom of the black battleship was impressively printed with a huge federal military emblem. It's a Federation battleship. It was as if he was facing a great enemy. Everyone was on their guard. Just like Shi, they found it inconceivable. What about their defense system? Did it fail? Why was there no interception or warning? Why did they let this battleship barge in, as if it was unmanned? The galactic pirate leader gave the order to prepare for battle. How many battleships are there in total? The pilot at the side said in a daze, 1. The Federation only sent 1 battleship? The galactic pirate leader was dumbfounded. One had to know that the Federation had sent out the same number of battleships, but they were still unable to annihilate them. Could it be that the Federation was not here to fight with them, but to negotiate? At this point he smiled smugly. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. Destroy it. Negotiate? That was impossible. He gave the order, but there was no response from the other battleships. He frowned. What's going on? The pilot pointed at the battleship in the sky in horror. Look. The battleship in the sky started to light up in large patches. Its black outer shell was like a layer of scales that had been flipped over. Layers of dazzling silver light appeared. Along with this unforeseen event, its enormous body was revealed before everyone. The galactic pirate leader's body shook. This is the #1 battleship in the Federation's galaxy that accompanied the Empire's Marshal to conquer the entire Federation. World Terminator. Through the spacious viewing window of the battleship, a man in a black uniform looked down at everyone from above. This was the most handsome man in the entire Empire, but also the most brutal and cold-blooded man. He was tall, and his uniform fitted him perfectly. Even the buttons were buttoned up to the top of his collar. He was strict and ascetic. His skin was deathly pale under the cold light. He held a golden scepter with the star of the Empire in his hands. This was a symbol of his status and also a signal of death. The Empire's Marshal was not here to negotiate. He was here to annihilate the pirates. The kind that did not leave anyone alive. The galactic pirate leader, who was still feeling smug a second ago, was completely panicking at this moment. Didn't the Empire's Marshal go on an expedition to the K-34b galaxy? He would not be back for at least a few decades. Why did he? If the Empire's Marshal had not left, they would not have dared to rob the Federation's supply planet and space station, even if they had 100 guts. What should we do? What should we do? The galactic pirate leader broke out in cold sweat. Not only him, but the rest of the galactic pirates were also scared silly. This was the Empire's youngest general, the only marshal in the entire galaxy, who had intimidated the entire Federation. He was born into a fallen aristocrat and had the lowest resources, but he still managed to carve out a bloody path for himself in the Federation. No one dared to go against him. Run. Run quickly. It was unknown who shouted this, but everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. They all jumped onto the battleship and prepared to escape. The Empire's Marshal looked coldly at the galactic pirates who had killed countless civilians. It was as if he was looking at a group of ants who did not know where to go. The Terminator is requesting to execute orders. The AI's mechanical voice became cold and domineering. The Empire's young Master Marshal said word by word, "Extermination plan execute." The AI's mechanical voice sounded again. "Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate. Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate. Extermination plan is about to begin. Civilians, please evacuate." Countdown begins. A row of blinking numbers appeared in the boundless starry sky. It was a 2-minute countdown. The galactic pirates were extremely fast. In just a minute, they had already left in their respective battleships. At superluminal speed, they could travel to several planets in a minute. Even though there were no longer any battleships on the ground, the countdown in the night sky continued. Until the last second, the Terminator began to chase after the fleeing battleships. 30 seconds later, the universe returned to peace. In the cockpit, the Terminator's AI resumed its cute mechanical voice. "Baby, it's time to eat. Tonight's dinner is very sumptuous." However, the Empire's Marshal did not manage to eat this dinner. On their way back, they encountered the collapse of a star. This huge star had collapsed for a long time, and had been relatively stable. It was estimated that it would burn for at least 100,000 years. However, for some unknown reason, it had burned out prematurely. In the last few seconds, it suddenly collapsed to form a black hole. The Terminator was captured by the black hole's gravitational force. An alarm that had never been sounded before sounded in the cockpit. They could not return. Star System K-93. The Empire's Marshal calmly welcomed his death. He had gone on expeditions everywhere. There would be a day when he would die on the way. He stroked the control panel and said softly, "Terminator, your service ends here. You are the glory of the Empire." The AI was silent for a long time. Then it said solemnly, "Marshal, you too." The next second, it said calmly, "Hibernation chamber activated." The interior of the cockpit changed rapidly. The original visual window disappeared and was replaced by a wall with a screen. A luxurious hibernation chamber that could supply people for hundreds of years rose from the ground. The Empire's marshal frowned. "Terminator, what are you doing?" The AI sounded very calm. "Hibernation chamber separated. Medical cabin activated. Weapons cabin ready to attack. Welcome the black hole's gravitational force. Goodbye, Marshal." As soon as it finished speaking, a terrifying impact swept through the entire hibernation chamber. The Empire's marshal's brain waves vibrated to the extreme. Then a strong sense of dizziness hit him and he lost consciousness. On the screen, a few lines of words flashed. Habitable planet captured. Positioning. Virgo supercluster, Milky Way, Earth. Digression. Little first aid kit. I'm a person who's served the army. Give me some mysterious energy. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels to read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/1038988737. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. Chapter 1005. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. The Marshal woke up in a warm ocean. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was to call for the Terminator. Following the sound of air leaking, the hibernation pod above his head slowly opened. The gentle AI voice sounded. "The medical pod is at your service. You have slept for a total of 1,221 days. Welcome to your awakening. We will now conduct a full body checkup for you." He lay motionless in the hibernation pod, allowing waves of red light to scan his body. The AI said, "Checkup complete. Your vital signs are normal. Overall evaluation. Excellent. You are indeed the most powerful marshal in the Empire. Awesome." This was the voice and program set by the Terminator. However, the Marshal knew that it did not have the consciousness of the Terminator. The consciousness of the Terminator would forever remain in the battleship that was engulfed by the black hole. The rumors were right. The Terminator was initially a nanny robot that accompanied him through his lonely and bullied growth period. After he modified his own battleship, he retained the intelligence of the nanny robot. This led to the creation of the Terminator. And the Terminator seemed to have awakened its own consciousness through the modifications and updates. "Baby, today is also a day for you to eat obediently." The AI's cute voice sounded in the medical pod. This was also one of the programs set by the Terminator after it had awakened its consciousness. The Terminator was unbelievably huge. Its medical pod was also huge. It would take at least an hour to walk through every corner. Of course, the Marshal was not so free. As he ate his dinner, he connected the medical pod's equipment to the planet's data. This planet called Earth was at the stage of a first-level civilization. It had yet to develop the energy of the other planets in its galaxy. The life forms on Earth had very low energy levels, and their lifespans were only a few hundred years. After they died, it was almost impossible for them to feed back to the habitable zone. The K93 galaxy also had all kinds of life forms. They were also called humans. The difference was that the life forms on K93 had extremely long lifespans and high energy levels. After they died, they would disintegrate and the energy they contained would feed back to the entire galaxy. After learning more about Earth, he roughly compared the differences between himself and the people on Earth. He was probably equivalent to a teenager on Earth. In the hibernation chamber, people would not grow. Not counting that period of time, he was actually more than 30 years old. However, in the K93 galaxy, where lifespans were extremely long, those under 35 years old were considered young. If he hadn't lied about his age when he went to the imperial capital to join the army, he wouldn't have been able to get in. He learned more about the people on Earth, and then began to check the medical cabin's reserves. The AI reported in an orderly manner. When it read, "The hibernation chamber is operating normally," he was stunned. He had already come out, so why was the hibernation chamber still running? "Which hibernation chamber?" he asked. The AI said, "Hibernation chamber number 2. The general opened the number 2 hibernation cabin and saw a baby inside. It was only then that he remembered that he had passed by a supply planet that had been robbed by space pirates a few days before he left the K-93 galaxy. It was there that he had picked up a dying child. The baby was too weak and had been lying in the healing chamber the entire time. When the Terminator was born, the healing chamber automatically entered hibernation mode and became the number 2 hibernation chamber. The AI said, "Vital signs are weak. Do you want to switch to the healing chamber and continue the treatment?" The Imperial Marshal looked at the sleeping baby. This was perhaps the only companion from the K-93 galaxy. "Switch," he said. The medical cabin sat on top of a mountain. As it was hidden in another space, no one here could see it. The general walked out of the medical cabin and planned to go down the mountain for a walk. Unexpectedly, the gravity here was different from that of K-93, and he fell to the ground. The general hadn't been in such a sorry state for a long time. Just as he struggled to get up, he heard a quarrel nearby. He had already learned the language of this area and could understand what they were arguing about. It was a young man and woman. The woman, with her big belly, grabbed the man's arm and said through gritted teeth, "You have to make things clear today. What is going on between you and that woman?" The man coldly withdrew his arm and said impatiently, "Can you not be unreasonable?" The woman raised her phone angrily. "I am unreasonable? Surnamed Gu. I caught you in the act." The man looked at the photo on the phone and frowned. "When did you secretly take this?" The woman coldly said, "Do I need to secretly take a photo? You two are so open and aboveboard. You are just short of living in my house." The man bluntly said, "Don't talk nonsense. We are not in the kind of relationship you think we are. We are just colleagues who had a meal together. Don't be so suspicious. It's getting late. I should go back to the company. You can take a taxi back yourself." After saying that, he left the woman behind and walked to the top of the mountain. The parking lot was probably on the other side of the mountain. The woman angrily chased after him. "Surnamed Gu. I am pregnant, and you are planning to leave me here alone." The two of them pulled and tugged at each other until the woman accidentally bumped into the Imperial Marshal when they brushed past him. Because he hadn't adapted to Earth's gravity, the general couldn't avoid it. The woman's ring cut the back of his hand and fresh blood flowed out. The woman didn't apologize. He looked at the blood on the woman's ring and said in the local language, "Give me the ring." "Scram. I have to compensate you with a ring for bumping into you. In your dreams. Where did this little rascal come from?" The woman scolded. She wanted to say where did this little rascal come from, but when she saw the excessively handsome face of the youth, she suddenly choked. The youth was tall and wore a neat black uniform. His whole body emitted an ascetic and strict aura. The woman was stunned. Just at this moment, the man walked away. The woman didn't have time to pay attention to the youth in the military uniform and quickly chased after him. He looked at the woman's gradually disappearing back and deeply frowned. "You better not get hurt." Unfortunately, the woman was injured in the process of stopping the man from getting on the car. 2 months later, a white and chubby baby girl was born. Her cries were loud and clear, and she was more beautiful than ordinary newborns. Her family gave her a pleasant name, Gu Jiao. Digression. All children under 35 years old are cubs. Longihaha. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1038843335 HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. Chapter 1006. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. AD 2222 was the 8th year since he came here. He finally found the child who had infected his blood on the hillside that day. It should have been the woman who had cut him with the ring, but for some reason, the energy in his blood had been absorbed by the child in the woman's belly. This was the only human who could survive after absorbing the energy of the K-93 system. He brought her back to the medical cabin with the intention of studying her. The little girl was small and was soaked in the rain. Her large black eyes looked at him with vigilance and curiosity. This was a pretty little girl with an abnormal calmness. However, she was still a child. She maintained her calm appearance, but her small fists were clenched tightly by her side. "Lie down." He pointed at the cold operating table and said. The little girl stared at him for a long time before obediently lying down. He put on sterile gloves and began to take her blood and hair. He also did a series of ECG and brainwave tests. The little girl was very cooperative and quiet throughout the process. She didn't even resist when the needle was inserted into her blood vessels. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "This pain was nothing. Come here and eat something." He took off his gloves and said calmly. The little girl jumped down from the operating table and looked at his back. She said in a daze, "My clothes are wet. Do I have a change of clothes?" "Of course. There isn't anything suitable for you." He took one of his pajamas and tossed it to her, pointing to the bathroom. The little girl took the clothes into the washroom and came out half an hour later. Her hair was wet and her body exuded a faint cold aura. The large pajamas on her small body were so loose that it almost reached the ground. He looked at her and frowned. "You didn't use hot water?" The little girl's eyes widened in surprise. Is there hot water?" There was, but the Imperial Marshal was used to cold water, so he turned off the hot water function. It was his negligence. He had never raised a child and had never been close to anyone. He had forgotten that the people here were different from the K-93 system. But this girl was also strange. Did she not know how to use it? How did she survive all these years? Was it okay to take a cold shower? Dinner was a tasteless steak prepared by the medical cabin. The stool at the dining table was very high. The little girl tried for a long time but still couldn't sit on it. Instead, she was sweating all over again. Even so, he did not hear her ask him for help. In the end, it was he who lifted her onto the stool. She grabbed the knife and fork clumsily and ate with relish. His movements were slow and deliberate, with the elegance of an ancient aristocrat. Then he realized that the little girl was imitating him. She straightened her back, and did not even let go of his habit of folding his handkerchief to wipe his mouth. The results came out the next day. The amount of K-93 energy in her blood was too high. Logically speaking, she shouldn't be so calm. He had seen people who were infected by his blood. They either died or suffered a fate worse than death. "Don't you feel bad?" he asked. The little girl was holding a cup and gulping down water. Hearing this, she raised her head and looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" He said, "Physical discomfort? It's very painful. Your heart is burning and your lungs are hot. It's like 10,000 ants are gnawing at your body." These were all the feelings he got from the few survivors. Everyone was different. She thought about it seriously and shook her head. Forget it. She was infected in her mother's womb. She was born in this terrible torture. She had never experienced a day of normal life. For her, discomfort was normal. After another 3 days, he went out. When he came back, there was a trace of his opponent's blood on him. She lost control. After waking up, she did not remember the damage she had done. She just could not find her cup. She probably understood something. When she saw him, the first thing she said was, "I'm not a little monster." A month later, he brought her back to the organization. In the past few years, in order to better adapt to life here, He joined an organization called Kuanpeng and became an assassin. Do you remember what you wanted to call me? He asked her. She nodded and said obediently, Godfather. Godfather, how old are you? She asked him. He looked at the dark corridor like the mouth of an abyss and said indifferently, 16. Converted to the age of the earth. It was about this number. Gu Jiao showed amazing talent in the organization. When she was 13, she got her own code name, Shadow. This meant that she finally became an official member of the organization. She was no longer an 8-year-old girl who did not know anything. She already knew that she was different from ordinary people. There seemed to be some strange and violent factors in her body. When she encountered blood, she would lose control. There was no cure, only control. When she was 15 years old, she received her first mission, to retrieve stolen information. There were 8 people in total, and they had a lot of guns. She was wearing a white knee-length dress. Her waist was slender, and her long black hair was soft and shiny. She had a clean and young face. She had the purest spirit of a young girl. She stood on the side of the road with her hands behind her back. From time to time, she would look at the passing cars. Her pitiful appearance was enough to arouse the desire of any man to protect her. As expected, a small truck with goods stopped beside her. The person in the truck was her mission target. She thought that she was acting alone. Little did she know that in a tall building in the distance, a man in a black trench coat was staring at her. The man's eyes were cold and his eyes were cold. He had one hand in the pocket of his trench coat, and the other hand was holding a sniper rifle. Her acting was terrible. Her smile was not good at all. Soon she was exposed. In the end, she had to use violence to get through. She kicked the man who was lying on the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. She curled her lips and said in disdain, "Can't take a beating at all." She turned and left with the results of today. After walking about 30 to 40 meters, the unconscious man on the ground suddenly woke up. He pulled out the gun at his waist and aimed at Gu Jiao's back. However, before he could pull the trigger, the man upstairs picked up the silenced sniper rifle in his hand and shot him in the head without even opening the sniper scope. At that moment, a rumbling truck sped past Gu Jiao. The loud rumbling noise covered the sound of the bullet piercing through the air. Gu Jiao had no idea that she was in danger. When she arrived at the meeting place, her godfather's black pickup was already waiting for her on the side of the road. "Huh? Godfather?" She tilted her head and walked over in surprise. With her hands behind her back, she bent her slender waist and looked at him through the window. "Isn't Cheetah here to pick me up?" He put one hand on the steering wheel and said expressionlessly. He had a last-minute mission and left first. Gu Jiao said, "Oh." She opened the door and sat in the passenger seat. He said calmly, "Seatbelt." Gu Jiao obediently fastened her seatbelt. Then she showed him a small metal box that she had won this time. She said proudly, "All the data is inside. Am I awesome?" He nodded indifferently and started the car. The soft and warm wind blew in, and her smooth black hair was gently blown up. She turned around to look for food in the back seat. This action closed the distance between the two of them. Her hair, which exuded the fragrance of a young girl, brushed against his face. It was a little itchy. After returning to the organization, he said to Gu Jiao, "Come over in a bit. We need to take blood." Oh. Gu Jiao would come to the medical cabin every month to take blood. She was used to it and never asked why. The Marshal of the Empire should be called Godfather now. After taking Gu Jiao's blood, the Godfather went to the equipment for analysis. The results were the same as before. K93's energy substance had an extremely strong replication ability. The concentration in the blood showed no signs of decreasing at all. This was a very strange phenomenon. Since he came here, he had been in a state of constant consumption because he couldn't supply K93 with energy. To put it bluntly, his life would be shorter than if he was in K93. However, the energy substance he needed could be replicated infinitely in her body. He still couldn't explain why, but what he was sure of was that he could use her energy to replenish his life. The stronger she was, the faster the energy substance in her body replicated, and the more beneficial it would be for him to extend his life. "Godfather, the food is ready." Today's sweet and sour fish is your favorite. She suddenly appeared at the entrance of the examination room. Her cute young girl head poked in. Her eyes blinked, as if they could speak. She wasn't like this to outsiders. Only in front of him would she let down all of her defenses. He calmly turned off the equipment. She was just an experimental subject, an energy supply to extend his life. He wouldn't develop any feelings for her. While eating, her phone lit up. He sat across from her and casually glanced at it. She picked it up and looked at it. She suddenly said to him, "I don't have any missions this weekend. Can I go out and play? Someone asked me out." His hand that was picking up rice paused. "Man or woman?" Gu Jiao said honestly, "Senior." "No," he said calmly. "Oh." Gu Jiao lowered her head and continued eating. He looked at her coldly. "Are you disappointed? Senior said he would take me surfing. I'm looking forward to it." She was born different from normal people. She had almost no friends. This was the first person who said he would take her out to play. "It's not far," she said. "It's in Coastal City. It's less than a 2-hour drive." He put down his chopsticks and slowly wiped the corners of his mouth with the napkin on the plate. "Go if you want." The listless little quail raised her head and looked at him energetically. "Godfather, do you want to go?" He said calmly, "No." "Childish." Gu Jiao happily went to pack her things. The next morning, she went to the agreed place to meet with her senior. Her godfather went to the organization. As soon as he entered the door, he ran into his assistant in a hurry. Because he was too anxious, he didn't see him. If it was in the past, he wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Today he was probably free. For the first time he asked, "What happened?" The assistant was startled. "King? It's like this. There's a mission in Coastal City. It was supposed to be assigned to Cheetah, but I can't contact him. This kid probably went somewhere to pick up girls last night. I'm going to contact Black Eagle." "Coastal City?" he asked. "Yes," the assistant said. He said calmly, "No need to contact Black Eagle. I'll go." As soon as he said that, the assistant was shocked again. But it's just an E-grade mission. How long has it been since you took on a mission below S level?" Digression, Jiao Jiao, both hands raised, little fist. "Today is a day of freedom, no one can control me. Even breathing is the smell of freedom." Asterisk mission levels from low to high. FEDCBAS. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/1038647222. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. Chapter 1007. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels that can't be found online can be found here. The senior who was dating Gu Jiao was called Shi Yi. He was 17 years old this year, and was only 2 years older than Gu Jiao. He was the school beau and the top student of No. 1 middle school. He came from a wealthy family, and was good at basketball. Many girls were chasing after him. However, he was attracted to Gu Jiao, who was always alone. Others said that Gu Jiao was very strange. She always gave people a cold and unapproachable feeling. Being glanced at by her would make one's hair stand on end for a few days. However, in his opinion, this kind of girl was special enough. "There's a bonfire party tonight. I've booked a room. Don't worry. It's 2 rooms. Shi Yi scratched his head shyly. "Of course, if you don't want to stay here, I can send you back earlier." "It's okay. I want to watch the bonfire party." Gu Jiao looked at him and smiled. "This is the first time someone has invited me out to play." Shi Yi was mesmerized by her smile. She was usually cold and aloof, but when she smiled, It was even more beautiful than the spring scenery in March. Shi hurriedly said. If you like, I can take you out to play every day. Gu Jiao reached out her hand to him. Shi was stunned. Were they going to hold hands? He was so excited that his throat moved. His palms were sweaty and he wiped them on his clothes. Just as he was about to take her hand, he heard her say, "Room card." Shi was so embarrassed that he quickly pulled his hand back. He took out a room card and handed it to her. "It's a room with a sea view. The one with the best view." Actually, it wasn't. The presidential suite with the best view had already been booked. However, the 2 rooms that he booked were also very good. Gu Jiao took the room card and went to room 709. When she opened her backpack and was about to change into her carefully prepared swimsuit, she was instantly dumbfounded. She held up a ball of colorful and ugly fabric. "Where's my bikini? How did it become a one-piece swimsuit? And such a long skirt? Who touched her bag? How infuriating. Such a conservative and old style." It was obvious that it was the godfather's style. When he wore his own clothes, even the top button on his collar would be fastened. "What? I'm not even allowed to wear a bikini," Gu Jiao muttered. Suddenly, an idea flashed through her mind. She called the front desk and said, "I want a set of bikinis." The receptionist's gentle voice came from the phone. "I'm sorry, madam. Our hotel is out of bikinis." Gu Jiao looked at the deserted beach and said, "I don't see many customers. Why are they sold out?" The receptionist looked at the young man in a black trench coat and sunglasses in embarrassment. She covered the microphone and said in a low voice, It's sold out. And it was all bought by this handsome guy alone. Who would have thought that he was such a pervert?" The receptionist hung up the phone and laughed dryly. She handed over the room card and said, "The clothes will be sent to your room later." The godfather took the room card and left without looking back. The assistant's voice came from the Bluetooth earpiece. "There's a change of plans. He'll arrive at night. Do you want me to book a room for you?" The godfather said indifferently, "No, it's already booked." "Ha." On the other end of the phone, the assistant looked at his phone in disbelief. For a moment, he suspected that he had dialed the wrong number. The godfather hated spending the night outside the most. He actually booked a room for himself? Did he know in advance that there was a change of plans? He opened his mouth and said, "That?" The godfather hung up the phone. In the end, Gu Jiao could only put on the ugly and old-fashioned one-piece swimsuit with a look of disgust. When Shi, who was drinking on the beach, saw her in this outfit, he almost choked to death. Was she really not stealing his grandma's swimsuit? He almost thought that his grandma had caught him on a date just by looking at the swimsuit. However, Gu Jiao had a good foundation. She was a 15-year-old girl with a slim body. The areas that should be developed were very well, and the areas that should not be developed were not fat at all. Her waist was so thin that it could be held with one hand, and her legs were long and straight. Her snow-white skin was like jade, and there was a tattoo of a fallen angel on her right ankle, which made her legs look even more white. Of course, students couldn't get tattoos. This one was pasted on. Shi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. In the presidential suite that faced the beach, the godfather was wearing sunglasses and standing on the sunny balcony. He had one hand in his pocket, and the other holding a glass of red wine. He was staring at a certain reckless girl with a dangerous look in his eyes. Gu Jiao was wearing the most old-fashioned clothes, but it couldn't hide her white skin and beauty. Not only was Shi infatuated with her, but many people also came to talk to her. Gu Jiao didn't have time to pay attention to them. She wanted to surf. It was her first time surfing, and Shi taught her step by step. The young man and woman were full of youthfulness and the sour smell of love. "Eyesore," the godfather said as he drank the red wine. The assistant's confused voice came from the Bluetooth earpiece. "What eyesore?" The godfather stared at the little girl, who was laughing so hard that she was swaying back and forth. "Nothing." Gu Jiao was a fast learner, and surfing was no exception. After an hour, she was better than Shi. Shi was exhausted. He hugged his surfboard to the beach and panted as he looked at Gu Jiao, who was enjoying herself. She was as excited as a little sparrow, as if she had endless energy. So nice, so cute. Yi sat on the beach with his hands on the sand behind him. He looked at his girl with a smile and felt very satisfied. Gu Jiao played until it was dark. She was hungry, so she put away the surfboard. The two went back to the hotel to change their clothes. Yi booked a barbecue stall. There were already many guests there, and the aroma of barbecue and cumin filled the small square. Yi let Gu Jiao sit while he ran around to get the ingredients and set up the stove. The young master of the Shi family was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. It was the first time he was so attentive to a girl. He had practiced at home, and the taste of the barbecue was not bad. Gu Jiao said, honey, I like sweet things. But the godfather didn't let her eat too much, saying that it would spoil her teeth. Okay. Yi brushed a layer of crystal clear honey on the barbecue with his face full of soot. Is it good? Yi asked her. Gu Jiao ate the barbecue. Her mouth was very busy, and she nodded like a little hamster. Yi smiled happily. On the other side, the godfather was ready to take action. Tonight's mission was to intercept a batch of goods. The reason why it was only rated as Class E was because the other party's background was not big, and their armed forces were not strong. According to the initial information, the operation was supposed to be carried out in the afternoon when there were few people around. However, the other party came late, and the number of people on the beach doubled. It was a bit tricky. What was more tricky was that the organization's information was wrong. It was not 10 pounds of goods, but 50 pounds, and it was taken over by another big shot. Things were getting troublesome. The godfather jumped down from the roof and came to the trading room. He raised his gun with a silencer and shot one person at a time, knocking down a large number of people. At this moment, two accomplices who had just returned from outside opened the door. The two of them saw the corpses on the ground, closed the door, and fled. Do they have any more goods on them? The godfather asked the investor who was kneeling on the ground coldly. The investor nodded in fear. The godfather opened the door vigilantly and put the silencer back into the holster on his waist, covering it with his windbreaker. At this time, Gu Jiao and Yi had just finished their barbecue and went to the snack booth. Yi bought her an ice cream. She lowered her head and licked it, dipping her mouth in the cream. Yi smiled and reached out to wipe her mouth. She suddenly turned her head and looked at a figure flashing by in the night. Godfather? What? Yi did not understand and thought that she was deliberately avoiding his touch. He quickly reached into his pocket and awkwardly handed her a tissue. Gu Jiao did not take it. She stuffed the ice cream into his hand and walked away. Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao. Yi called out twice but failed to stop her. He grabbed the ice cream and chased after her. Gu Jiao did not catch up with the godfather. Instead, she turned her head and saw a man in a silver suit holding Yi with a knife as he walked out from behind a flower bed. Yi was just an ordinary high school student, so he could not help but show some fear in this situation. But to Yi's shock, Gu Jiao's eyes were calm. The man in the suit shouted, "Don't move. Don't come over, or I'll kill him." Gu Jiao's aura suddenly changed. She began to emit a chilling murderous aura. "Let him go." The man in the suit's eyes flashed. The blade of the knife was pressed against Yi's neck and directly cut a line of blood. He whispered, "Don't make a sound or I'll kill you." But Yi did not listen to him. Yi suppressed the fear in his heart and trembled as he shouted, "Watch your back." No one saw how Gu Jiao did it. She turned around and pierced the throat of the sneak attacker with the spike in her hand. Blood splattered all over her face. The man fell to the ground in disbelief. Even in death, he did not close his eyes in horror. Gu Jiao kicked the gun up and held it firmly in her hand. She turned around and shot the man in the suit in the thigh. This gun was also equipped with a silencer, so the sound was not loud. Gu Jiao originally wanted to shoot the man in the head, but in order not to scare Yi, she chose to shoot the man in the thigh. The man was in so much pain that he let go of Yi and fell to the ground. He hurriedly tried to pull the gun out, but Gu Jiao shot him in the wrist and shattered it. After making sure that he could not fight back, Gu Jiao came in front of Yi. Looking at the blood on his neck, she frowned and reached out with her fingertips. Subconsciously took a step back as well. Gu Jiao's hand froze in midair. Gu Jiao tilted her head and looked at him in a daze. She did not understand what he was afraid of. Yi looked at Gu Jiao in horror, and then looked at the half-melted ice cream in his hand. He wanted to protect her even if he had to risk his life. But he was also frightened by her. How could she? Gu Jiao could not read his emotions. She thought about it seriously and pointed the gun at the man in the suit on the ground. Are you afraid that he will hurt you again? Then I will kill him. Stop. Yi roared. Gu Jiao looked up in a daze and looked into his red eyes. She did not understand and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Yi looked at this junior who could kill without blinking and still be so calm. He suddenly felt that he could not breathe. He stepped back until he turned around. He did not know if it was out of fear or disgust, but he quickly left the place. Gu Jiao looked at his back and murmured, "I just want to protect you." The night wind blew. She looked a little lonely. Her little head drooped as she slowly walked back. As she walked, she saw a shadow on the ground. She subconsciously looked up and saw her godfather, who was wearing black trousers and a white shirt, sitting on the flower bed with his hands in his pockets. The flower bed was quite high, but his legs were longer. Gu Jiao did not say anything and did not continue to walk forward. "Do you like him a lot?" the godfather asked faintly. Gu Jiao said in a low voice, "It's my first time making a friend." The godfather's expression softened. He stood up elegantly and coldly, picked up the windbreaker beside him, and went to Gu Jiao. He waved his hand and put it on her. Her cold little body was instantly enveloped by his breath and warmth. She did not feel wronged, just a little stuffy. But at this moment, she suddenly felt wronged. She smacked her forehead against his strong chest. The godfather raised his slender hand and gently patted her head. "My legs are numb," Gu Jiao said. The godfather sighed helplessly. He carried her on his shoulder and walked towards the hotel with his long legs. When he passed by the man in the suit whose right hand and right leg were injured by Gu Jiao, the man in the suit hurriedly took out his gun with his left hand. The godfather did not even look at him and shot him right in the heart. After returning to the presidential suite, the godfather ordered room service. Gu Jiao looked at the ice cream in front of her, which was obviously many times more expensive than the one in front of her. She swallowed her saliva and asked, "For me?" The godfather counted the goods and said indifferently, "You didn't get to eat it just now, did you?" Gu Jiao's eyes sparkled. "Then how many can I eat?" The godfather. "Half." Gu Jiao's face darkened. Gu Jiao sat cross-legged on the sofa, sipping the ice cream cone in her hand. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was still room service. Gu Jiao thought it was delicious food again. "Come in." The door opened and the waiter brought in a row of sexy bikinis that were late. Gu Jiao was dumbfounded. "Digression, Jiao Jiao. Are you buying so many for me?" "Oh, the godfather, no." "Jiao Jiao. Are you going to wear it yourself?" "The godfather." As for whether or not Xiao Heng was the godfather's reincarnation, you can find the answer in the details. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/10384515. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. Chapter 1008. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online. Yi returned to H City that night and never contacted Gu Jiao again. Even if he met her, he would avoid her and never have anything to do with Gu Jiao again. Gu Jiao's life went on as usual, but she didn't try to make friends easily anymore. Also, as the intensity of the training increased, she lost control more and more often. She needed to control the stimulation that blood gave her, so her godfather started to let her study medicine. When she was 16, She was in her second year of high school, but she was admitted to the Imperial Medical College as the top scorer in science in the province. When she was 17, she started to accept missions above D level. When she was 18, she received her first S-level mission. She was the first member other than her godfather to receive an S-level mission as soon as she reached adulthood. As expected of her godfather's child, the mission was to assassinate a drug lord in Continent F. Gu Jiao completed it very well. During the month she was in Continent F, her godfather rejected all the missions sent by the organization. Gu Jiao didn't know that he had rejected the missions and thought that he was doing well in the country. However, the organization noticed something. When Gu Jiao and her godfather returned to the organization, Alan, one of the three bosses, called her godfather to his office. "You've been paying too much attention to Shadow recently," Alan said straightforwardly. "That's my business," her godfather said calmly. Alan held a glass of red wine in his hand. He smiled and said, "I know you brought her back and you've been training her, but you should know the rules of the organization. If you just want to sleep with her, you can, but don't fall in love with her." Ignoring him, her godfather turned around and left. Alan looked at his back coldly and took a sip of red wine. Then he looked at the video on the computer and said to the people in it, "We'll accept that mission, but I want 10 times the commission." Gu Jiao received another mission not long after she returned to China. The mission this time was a little special. Someone wanted to ruin the marriage between the two big families and had arranged for assassins to assassinate the bride during the wedding. After negotiating with the groom, it was decided that Gu Jiao would step into the church instead of the bride. Cheetah and Flying Eagle would lie in ambush in the dark. Once the other party made a move, they would quickly kill him. It sounded easy, but the killer had a powerful background. He was second only to King in the underworld, so this was actually a very dangerous mission. If anything went wrong, Gu Jiao's life would be in danger. Cheetah and Eagle are no match for him. Sitting on the office chair, the godfather frowned. The assistant sighed and said, "But the mission has already been assigned. It's impossible to call them back. Also, you've been refusing to accept missions recently, which has already made the higher-ups unhappy. Don't get involved in this mess anymore." The day of the mission, the godfather still went. He did not replace Cheetah or Eagle, nor did he hide in the dark. Instead, he chose to replace the groom. His disguise was so good that even Fei Ying and Cheetah did not recognize him at first glance. Gu Jiao didn't even look at the groom. The godfather asked, "Sir, do you take the lady next to you as your wife? No matter whether she is rich or poor, healthy or sick in the future. Will you always be with her?" He said, "Yes, I do." Hearing the familiar voice, Gu Jiao's heart skipped a beat. She looked up in surprise. The godfather said again, "Madam, do you take the groom as your wife? No matter whether he is rich or poor, healthy or sick in the future. Will you always be with him?" She looked at the man in front of her in a daze. "Godfather?" The godfather raised his slender hand and gently stroked her cheek. He looked at her deeply and asked, "Do you?" "I." Gu Jiao was so shocked that she could not speak. At that moment, the killer who had disguised himself among the guests shot at Gu Jiao. Everything happened in a flash. Gu Jiao did not have time to react. The godfather stood in front of her and was shot twice in the chest. He also shot at the killer. The killer was shot. The scene was chaotic. The cheetah and the eagle took a long time to aim at him. This was because he was injured and could not run fast. If the godfather had not appeared, Gu Jiao would have died today and the killer would have escaped. "Godfather." Gu Jiao supported him. The blood on his chest dyed her white wedding dress red. He forced himself to say, "Take me back to the medical cabin." The medical cabin existed in another space. The entrance was in a villa under his name. Gu Jiao sped all the way and ran countless red lights. She finally took him back to the medical cabin before he fainted. He took out the bullet and lay in the medical cabin. Every time he was injured, the energy in his body would dissipate. He was so weak that he fell asleep soon. When he opened his eyes again, he found that Gu Jiao was also lying in the medical cabin, lying motionlessly beside him. The medical cabin sensed his awakening and lit up with a soft light. With the light, he could see the situation in the medical cabin. Gu Jiao's blood was continuously flowing into his body. She didn't know how long it had been since she lost, but her rosy cheeks had become deathly pale. Even her lips had lost their usual color. "What are you doing?" he asked with a hoarse voice and a frown. Gu Jiao's eyelids moved slightly. She did not open her eyes. She was still lying on her side like a well-behaved kitten. "Don't you want my blood?" she said softly. These words came out of nowhere. At first he thought she was talking nonsense because she was too weak. But the godfather still understood. She knew everything. He brought her back, carefully cultivated her, and made her strong at all costs. It was all so that one day he could use her blood to prolong his life. "I'm willing." She leaned her forehead against his firm shoulder and said softly, "I'm willing to give my life to you." Gu Jiao fell ill. Her constitution was different from ordinary people. This was the first time she had been so sick in her life. She had a high fever of 41 degrees. Holding her was like holding a hot stove. The godfather cooked some vegetable, meatball, and ginger soup for her, which was rare. Gu Jiao drank a mouthful and instantly sobered up. Her head was no longer buzzing, and her nose was no longer blocked. She broke out in a cold sweat. It was really the worst drink in the world. The effect seems to be good. The godfather looked at her eyes that had turned from dull to sober and said, "I'll cook it for you again tomorrow." In order not to be poisoned by the godfather's dark cuisine a second time, she forced her fever to go down that night. Even his cells despised his culinary skills. The godfather did not let her return to the organization immediately. She stayed in the medical cabin for an entire month. In this month, she unlocked many new skills such as cooking, wine and songs from 100 years ago. She was not a good drinker and got drunk in one gulp. She did not stop when she was drunk. She held the wine bottle with one hand and stepped on the table with one foot. "Little Mia." "Music." The cute AI's voice sounded. "Music will be played for you." The godfather sat on the sofa expressionlessly and looked at someone who was drunk. The godfather had accidentally discovered a year ago that the Terminator's consciousness had not completely dissipated. However, after experiencing the impact of the black hole and the trip to space, its consciousness was in a very weak state, and sometimes it did not work. Anyway, it worked when she called it. It even acquiesced to the nickname she gave it. So how did she know that her blood was very useful to him? The case was solved. It was really hard to guard against a thief in your own home. She was very engrossed in singing. She came to his side with a wave of her hand and looked straight at him. In the next second, she changed her tune. In the brothel, she sang about meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Every step she took was filled with longing below the stage. "She won't recognize the old acquaintance on the stage," he said about the wedding night. Everyone congratulated the beauty and the talent, didn't hear a sigh of love in the play. Usually, her acting skills were terrible, but her singing was quite good. Glancing back with a smile, it was probably nothing more than that. He lowered his eyes and drank the champagne in his glass. He had a good tolerance for alcohol, but at this moment, he seemed to be a little drunk. Gu Jiao looked at him with misty eyes. "If you go to ancient times, you will definitely be the top scholar." "Yes, the top scholar in martial arts." "Then I will be your wife, hee hee hee." She laughed like a little fool. The godfather. "Huh, you are so drunk that you don't even know what you are talking about." After another hour, Gu Jiao finally stopped. He thought that she was tired and stood up to clean up the place. Unexpectedly, she leaned in front of him with her hands behind her back. She raised her flushed face and looked at him without blinking. "I will tell you a secret. I like you." She spoke very softly, and there was a hint of drunkenness in her tone. The godfather was slightly stunned, but said in a normal tone, "You are drunk." The AI sounded. "Warm reminder, the medical system has detected that your heart rate is too fast. Do you need emergency treatment?" The godfather glared at the camera on the wall. Gu Jiao looked at him stubbornly. The godfather's expression didn't change at all. It was still as cold as snow. "Don't forget the rules of the organization." Gu Jiao said, "I like you secretly. I don't want them to find out." The godfather said coldly, "It is useless even if you like me. I will never be with you. Since you already knew, You should know that I have always been using you. I took the bullet for you because I needed you to live, to prolong my own life one day." In the living room of the medical cabin, a song suddenly sounded. "I do not mean what I say. Did I make you sad? I am only using tough words to disguise my weakness. I did not mean to leave you out." The godfather's face darkened. Gu Jiao looked at him stubbornly. "I don't believe you." He walked past her coldly and said in a cold tone, "It is useless if you don't believe me. I will never like you." The song in the medical cabin changed. Oh, yeah, I love you in my heart. I don't know what you are thinking. Oh, I love you in my heart." The godfather clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. The destroyer of worlds. He walked out of the living room without looking back, leaving Gu Jiao alone on the spot. The Terminator continued to court death. The song changed seamlessly. "For all the pain of love, for all the pain of hate, I can no longer differentiate between love and hate. Is this it? Blood and tears fall together. My heart is broken. My trembling hands cannot stop. Unforgivable." The godfather couldn't take it anymore. He switched off the smart mode in a second. The Terminator. Oh, the godfather went to the bathroom to take a cold shower. The heat in his body didn't dissipate for a long time. The people of the K93 galaxy had extremely long lifespans. Their genes didn't have a strong desire to reproduce. As a result, they didn't fall in love so easily. Moreover, the stronger a person was, the less likely it was to fall in love. So had he become weaker, or had he been on this planet for too long and gradually been assimilated by them? He stood under the shower, and the cold water poured mercilessly on his toned body. He was 195 meters tall. Years of training had given him a body that could make one's blood boil. Chest muscles, 8-pack abs, Apollo's belt. Everything was just right. They contained vigorous strength, but they weren't exaggerated. Even the lines on his arms were tight and well-defined. After a full hour, he finally managed to suppress the heat of his passion. The medical cabin had a water circulation system, so he didn't have to worry about wasting water. However, it took too long. Was he so unsatisfied? What was even more tragic was that he had finally calmed down. As soon as he opened the hibernation chamber, he found that Gu Jiao had actually fallen asleep inside. This girl was so drunk that she couldn't recognize her own hibernation chamber? Terminator. He spoke, but the AI didn't respond. Only then did he remember that he had switched off the smart mode. He stared fixedly at the little girl who was drunk to the point of unconsciousness, and lay down beside her without batting an eyelid. The hibernation chamber was quite spacious for one person to sleep in, so the two of them had to be close together. She lay on her side, her soft body pressed against his unbearable body. He felt the strangeness in his body and helplessly closed his eyes. That 1-hour cold shower was for nothing. Her fragrance was pervasive. It was like a drug that confused the mind. The more he resisted, the more it went into his bones. His exquisite Adam's apple moved. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. "You slept in the wrong place. Don't blame me for being rude." He propped himself up and caressed her soft face. He lowered his head and kissed her domineeringly. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/10380666. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 1009. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. Her lips were unbelievably soft. He originally wanted to just have a taste, but who knew that it would get out of hand? Gu Jiao was awakened by his kiss and groaned in a daze. Inadvertent teasing was the most fatal. He almost threw away his armor when she was whispering. He restrained himself and let go of her. His chest was heaving up and down and his breathing was short. If it wasn't for the dim light in the hibernation chamber, and Gu Jiao being so drunk, he would probably be able to see her slightly red face. Gu Jiao looked at the handsome face close to her with blurred eyes. She raised her slender fingers and pinched his hot cheeks. She said drunkenly, why am I still dreaming about this? She pinched, and pinched again. He allowed her little hands to mess around on his face. His heart slowly calmed down. She was drunk. He really shouldn't take advantage of her at this time. He planned to lie back down, but who knew that Gu Jiao would grab his collar and look at him fiercely? He didn't know what she was doing, so he could only let her grab him. She was so drunk that she should be asleep, but her eyes were wide open. She looked at him very seriously, as if she was trying to discern whether he was real or fake. No, it's not a dream, she said in surprise. You secretly kissed me? He said without changing his expression. This is my hibernation chamber. You came in by yourself. Gu Jiao blinked. The effect of the alcohol was still there. Her head was buzzing, so she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this logic. Wait, it still wasn't right. She said seriously, there's more than one hibernation chamber. He said, I recognize the bed. The inexperienced Gu Jiao was successfully led astray by him. So that seems like I'm wrong. Then, could it be that I took the initiative just now? He forced himself to look at her calmly. You said you liked me before lying in my hibernation chamber. What do you think? Gu Jiao looked down. She changed her grip on his collar from 2 hands to 4 small fingers. She only pinched a little. She felt very guilty. After a while, she closed her eyes. I'm asleep. Godfather. The Godfather looked at her face that was pretending to be asleep. His eyes scanned her facial features and finally landed on her swollen lips that he had kissed. In the end, he couldn't hold on her and kissed her again. Gu Jiao looked at him with her watery eyes. I didn't take the initiative this time. He lowered his head and gently kissed the corner of her lips. In a hoarse voice he said, It's me. Are you sober? Gu Jiao she nodded. He placed his hands on her sides and stared at her deeply. Suddenly, he opened the hibernation chamber and carried her out. Gu Jiao she curled her lips and said, You've already kissed me. Why are you still putting me back? He didn't stop when he passed by her hibernation chamber. Gu Jiao she was stunned. He carried her out of the medical cabin and walked all the way to the 2nd floor of the villa. He came to her room and imprisoned her on the soft bed. Her unique fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. He could feel his blood surging, and even his heart, which had always been calm and indifferent, was beating twice as fast. Gu Jiao she wasn't any better than him. She stared at him blankly. His cold eyes were tinged with desire. A drop of sweat slid down his forehead, and his exquisite Adam's apple moved. Gu Jiao she felt drunk again. The moonlight that night was very beautiful, but she felt that he was better than the moonlight. In a daze she heard him say, When you graduate, I'll take you away from the organization. She remembered that she had said yes, they would leave together. Unfortunately, that day didn't come. In a dark secret room, Gu Jiao she was lying on the cold operating table. She had been injected with drugs and neurotoxins. The neurotoxins were to prevent her from losing control, and the drugs were to erase her memory bit by bit. A red light lit up on the instrument at the side. A man in a surgical gown looked at the data on the monitor and said, This is the maximum dose. She'll become a fool if we inject her again. On the side, another doctor in a surgical gown paused and said, The last dose. No, the risk is too high. She's still useful to the organization. The higher-ups didn't say that she should be disabled. Then half a dose. Gu Jiao she completely fainted after the last dose. In September of the next year, Gu Jiao she, Xiaoheng, Long Yi and Chang Jing crossed the ice field and went to Dark Night Island. This year, the ice field seemed to be colder than the previous years. On the way, they encountered a snowstorm, which caused the young couple to be separated from Long Yi and Chang Jing. It was strange. In such a heavy snowstorm, Xiaoheng drove the direwolf in the right direction. Every time, his body emitted a cold aura that was different from the imperial court. The two arrived at Dark Night Island first. 2 days later, Changjing and Long Yi also arrived. Gu Jiao, she was very surprised. Changjing and Long Yi are both people of Dark Knight Island. They have been with the direwolf since childhood. You're actually faster than them. Being praised by his wife, Xiaoheng was very proud in his heart. But soon he couldn't be proud. Because Gu Jiao, she went to see that man again. He knew that accompanying Long Yi back and accompanying Changjing to visit relatives were all excuses. She came to sweep that man's grave. Yes, that man died miserably. In order to plant the living purple grass, he didn't hesitate to be buried in Dark Knight Island, and used his flesh and blood as nourishment. But she always thought about him in her heart. He was also very jealous. He sat on the stone bench in the courtyard, and inserted his hands into the warm hands. His face was dark, and his legs were shaking nonstop. Changjing came over with a plate of washed fruits and asked him, "Do you want to eat?" No. He expressionlessly refused. He wasn't in the mood to eat. From his angle, he could clearly see the direction of the cemetery. Gu Jiao, she braved the biting cold wind and cleaned the snow on the grave. She was very serious and didn't care that her hands were cold and red. Xiaoheng gritted his teeth. After shaking his left leg, he shook his right leg. His small eyes were cold. Changjing gorged herself on the fruits. Xiaoheng glanced at him. "Don't you know how to help? You only know how to eat. Don't you see how cold her hands are? If you help her, she won't have to pay tribute to that man. You really don't know how to share the burden of your future brother-in-law. I don't want you to be my brother-in-law. You're out." Changjing ate by herself, but she didn't forget to leave half for Feng Wuxiu. She had promised Feng Wuxiu that she would bring back some fruits, fish, and prawns from Dark Knight Island on the way back to Zhao country. Long Yi. Xiaoheng looked at the hand of Gu Jiao, which was completely red from the cold, and angrily said. She was already an adult, but she didn't know how to care for herself. What would happen if Long Yi did this kind of thing? Long Yi was in the secret room and couldn't hear Xiaoheng's voice. Xiaoheng swore that he was definitely not curious. He simply went to call Long Yi out to work. He indifferently stood up and gracefully brushed off the snowflakes on his robe. Then, he coldly walked into the secret room behind the study. The passage in the secret room was already opened by a small medicine box. This was the first time Xiaoheng had come here. The corridor was pitch black and there was an unlocked door at the end. White blazing light illuminated the area, adding a bit of mystery. A strange feeling welled up in the bottom of Xiaoheng's heart. He was sure that this was his first time here, but for some reason he didn't feel unfamiliar. He pushed open the unlocked door. Long Yi was sitting cross-legged on the colorful floor. He was holding a photo album in his hand. In the photo album, there were only 3 people. His godfather, her previous life, and infant Long Mengmeng. When he was a child, he was very weak. He was unable to leave the healing chamber, and was also unable to grow. It was his father who gave him a lot of his blood. Only then did he wake up in the healing chamber. Xiaoheng arrived behind Long Yi. He had no intention of peeping at other people's privacy. He didn't look at the thing in Long Yi's hand, rather asked, "Why are you in a daze? Didn't you hear me? I miss him." Long Yi honestly said. Who he was, it was self-evident. Xiaoheng dangerously narrowed his eyes. Very good, Long Yi had also started. Xiaoheng endured the sea of jealousy in his heart and looked all around. He discovered that all the doors were open except for the wooden door on the right side. He subconsciously asked, why is that door closed? Long Yi smoothly said, "Oh, that is father's hibernation chamber. Only he can enter." After he finished speaking, he realized that Xiaoheng had arrived. This room had a security system. Outsiders were not allowed to enter. Otherwise, they would be attacked. Long Yi woke up from his dream. He quickly put down the photo album and stood up. He wanted to block Xiaoheng behind him. Unfortunately, it was too late. The green light of the detector had already landed on Xiaoheng's body. The source light flickered twice and an ice-cold mechanical voice slowly resounded. "Unknown intruder detected. Do you want to eliminate him?" System pause. System error. System restart. The last time Gu Jiao came here, she also encountered the same situation. In the end, accompanied by the mechanical voice of system overload, the system crashed. Long he thought that this was also the same kind of malfunction. Who would have thought that the AI prompt of system overload wouldn't resound? Instead, system authentication. System restart. Reauthentication. Authentication complete. Marshall, long time no see. End of text. Digression. Thank you for your companionship. See you in Xinwen. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/10378139. HTML Genius 1 second to remember the address of this site. www.zhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.